Muted. Okay, great. Thank you. This is January 28th, 2025. It is 7:03. This is a public hearing of the Marijuana Licensing Authority. Could I have roll call, please?
Trustee Halverson. Here. Trustee Wakefield.
Here.
Trustee Schnitker.
Here.
Trustee Gardner is absent. Trustee George.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harper.
Here.
Mayor Cranker.
Here. Great, thank you. So this will be done like a public hearing. This is a continuation of the public hearing from October 28th, 2024. A couple reminders to set the stage for everybody. At the last hearing, the board directed staff to request the criminal history through law enforcement, as is our ability through Colorado Marijuana Rules 1, CCR 212-3, paragraph 140. That criminal history has been submitted as part of the evidence for this board to consider, but it won't be a part of the public record. And as a reminder, this board is acting as the licensing authority, and we're acting in a quasi-judicial role in this public hearing. Our decision must be based on the evidence presented at this hearing as it applies to the violation of the town code or the marijuana code. So we are only considering the evidence of record, which in this case is the criminal history record that we've reviewed. Our job is to review if there is probable cause that a violation exists. Probable cause means there are reasonable grounds to believe a violation has occurred. And the standard of proof for deciding to deny renewal of a license is based on showing of good cause for the non-renewal under a preponderance of the evidence standard. So what does this mean? A preponderance of the evidence standard means that the evidence presented at the hearing show that it is more likely than not, or 51% likely, that good cause exists to not renew the license. So for this public hearing, we'll hear some more guidance from the town attorney, Clayton Buckner, and we'll hear from the applicant, Mr. Davenport. And we will take, so the way this will go, we hear a little bit more from Clayton. We'll hear testimony from Mr. Davenport. We'll take public comment, and then we'll have trustee discussion and deliberations, and we can ask questions of the applicant and of our attorney. So at this time, I'd like to ask our attorney Clayton to provide some context and kind of a reminder of what we're considering tonight.
You guys hear me?
We can.
All right. So you did a great job with the introduction. I think that puts us in a proper posture here to consider these this application. As we go through this, you'll see in that MFR or that memorandum for record that I previously provided on marijuana licensing renewal hearings on October 22nd, 2024. You'll see in there under paragraph 4A that there are parameters for the board to consider regarding whether or not to accept, revoke, suspend, or non-renew a marijuana license. And looking through those parameters, I point the board towards CRS 4410-307, 1A through H here. These are a summarized version. And I would kind of point out to the board that in this, and under these set of circumstances, I think the only thing that is relevant and or the circumstances or facts that you have in front of you would be under 1A or 1H. I think B through G are either don't apply or there are no facts in front of the board for you to consider regarding any of those issues and whether or not this applicant could be considered a prohibited licensee. So I'll focus the board towards paragraph 1A and paragraph 1H. I would also advise the board that you only consider the evidence that you have requested from the sheriff, being that criminal history. That criminal history is allowed to be provided by the sheriff's office under the Colorado marijuana rules and the statute. However, that is consideration for the board only. Is documentary evidence and is not to be remitted to the public under the CCIC regulations. just as a precaution there. So you're allowed to have the Colorado Crime Information Center report, but you're not allowed to provide that to other people because it is considered protected information. However, you are allowed to discuss the contents of that report. The previous statements made by the sheriff, I would request the board consider as not relevant because the sheriff did not have proper information, or you did not see it in front of you, meaning you did not have that CCIC criminal history report. I don't think that the testimonial evidence is relevant, and especially in comparison to the report that you have in front of you that you can consider. So I would suggest that no testimonial evidence from the sheriff previously admitted would be considered as relevant, and I would ask that you stick to the report that you have that was previously provided by the sheriff according to the code. That report cannot be altered or affected in any way by a third party. That's taken straight from CCIC, and you can trust the information provided, and you can give the applicant a chance to rebut any of the information contained in that report. Subject to your questions, I think that's all I wanted to say, kind of set some boundaries for your discussion and the relevance for the hearing that you're about to embark on. And if you have any questions for me, there will be a time you can ask now, and there'll also be a time for legal interpretation and application of law after an overview of the record and discussion, then rebuttal evidence. Pending your questions.
Thanks, Clayton. Do any members of the board have questions now for Clayton? Or do you feel ready to move to in testimony? Okay. All right. So Mr. Davenport will now move to the time of the hearing where you're able to give your testimony as part of this public hearing. So let me give you a little reminder. Your testimony should be limited to the evidence that we're considering, which is your criminal record and any violation of the marijuana or town code. Any testimony related to the sheriff's department, the sheriff's office, the sheriff's character is really not
Not
relevant.
relevant, I understand.
Discussion.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to make sure you contain kind of your commentary to what we're considering in the hearing today. And to make sure that your testimony is kind of limited to
What we were talking,
anything you want to address in the criminal record or the
at
violation.
the address, I'll only hopefully take this a minute.
Great.
What Mr. Clayton has stated, y'all heard it, it's irrelevant. I already have my license here. I actually did not bring it with me, sorry. The Marijuana Enforcement Division had already accepted my license and gave it to me. I have a couple options I would not want to pursue with y'all, but it's a timely costing matter for you guys. Yeah, you guys reviewed my record. You've reviewed other people's records that I've sent. Who is what? I know people on this board that I've done my background checks on them too, including yourself, ma'am. Everybody has something to hide. I'm not hiding anything. Obviously, everything's out in the open. I'm a very prominent businessman and I do business accordingly. Yes, there's been some things that had happened in the past, yes, and it's been addressed. We move on. This town lost one marijuana business today, who you guys don't even know about. Kind Castle just closed their doors today. You guys are losing revenue. With that being said, I don't want you guys to lose any more revenue. I would love to have you guys flourish as much as I want to flourish as well. I'm looking at every one of you. You guys know me. Most of you know me. I'm working on a lot of things in this community, considering dark skies, big one. To have a sheriff throw me under a bus when I'm working on my new life and everything else. I'm not a felon, but the sheriff has felony charges pending against him. And this is not a this is a big deal. When you're talking about someone's character, will you please refrain yourself? Thank you. When you're talking about someone's moral character, I want moral character. I want a school system to have STEM, science, engineering, technology, mechanics. I want a community that will actually do things. Yes, I own a pot shop. Yes, I want to get the hell out of this business. I'm not a pothead like most people think. And people like other people that want to conspire against other people on video, which will be open again, sitting here in this room. I'm not anything that I'm accused of. Things come around, things go around. Rumors fly. This is a small town. We love each other. We should embrace each other, not fight. I fought enough in the Marine Corps. I fought 9.5 years. You know, I even tried to go for EMS. Tyler Jones knows this. And I have heart, regardless of political views. And I was fired because of those political views, my text messages. There's an amount of things that have been going on in this community that y'all need to wake up to, I guess, as I've woken up to. And what someone has accused me of and what you guys see, what you guys know, and what I know about y'all is the same. I'm not going to put judgment on y'all. I want to make this town flourish. I want a business here. I want a life. I don't even know if I even want to, I still don't even know how I want kids now because half this crap that's been going on. Because of the pressure, the political pressure of everything that goes on here. And if I'm going to have my time to talk, I want Bruce Conrad to resign because of what his actions were over the freaking.
And Mr. Davenport, keep it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Relevant.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. I'm sorry.
License and the
Yeah.
evidence.
My license, going back to that. You guys are going to lose revenue. I just got told that Kind Castle just shut down. You guys just upped our taxes to 5%. I got the documents from Ms. Molina here. That's a big percentage that we don't have as people, as business owners that are struggling, including one that probably is on this board and owns a business, because most of you guys probably don't understand most of it. I'm not just saying that you guys don't understand, but my license has to pertain to this livelihood of mine. And the fact that I'm being targeted by a political thing, and I'm not sitting here going to lay down my, roll over like whatever everybody else wants me to do. There's a lot of people listening in on this. There's people in Denver. There's people in freaking Durango. There's people all over because they support me. They know my background. And I don't want to be targeted anymore. I want to be part of this community and stay with y'all, regardless of what you guys have done wrong to me or someone else has done wrong to me. I want to be here with y'all. And I don't know what that's all about. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And if you guys want to deny my license, I would hate it for you guys. I mean, there is a section where I can actually go back to the district court and technically, I hate to say use the word sue, but I can go back on that, and I got enough money to do it, and I don't want to do that. I want to save my money so I can build this community and build something here. I don't want to fight you guys. None of y'all. You guys known me for many years. Please consider this tonight. And regardless of anything else, I sent you guys, but I wanted to make that public record with him, because if they're going to be a moral character grievance about me, I wanted to know that why is somebody else going to be worse than me and I have to suffer? Thank you guys for your consideration.
Thanks, Mr. Davenport.
Thank you.
We've heard from the applicant. We'll now open it up to public comment. If you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment, please click the raise hand button. Let me remind commentators that this is, again, public comment kind of related to the evidence, which we have as a criminal record. So I would caution folks to not make a bunch of comments on law enforcement character or the applicant, but really speaking to kind of the business license renewal for this applicant. So if you have a public comment and you'd like to make it, please click the raise hand button and we'll promote you to panelist and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Melina. We can hear you. Go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes to make your public comment.
Okay, thank you. My name is Spencer Ward. I was just going to say that I'm based out of Denver and I've worked with Cole for years, also in the cannabis industry. And I just think it's absolutely preposterous that I've never heard of someone's license being brought up on moral turpitude grounds, you know, going back to the 19th century. And I think that the state, you know, in Amendment 64 and all of the infrastructure and the regulations that it's created have set a bar that's high enough, which Mr. Davenport has already passed to get a state licensure. And if it's good enough for the state, I think it should be good enough for Silverton, Colorado. And I think otherwise, the optics of the situation is you are going after someone politically, or this is a politically motivated thing. And I hope that in light of the evidence, you come to the same conclusion. And that's what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead. We can see you. You're welcome to make your public comment. You'll have 3 minutes. You know what? Matthew Zeinert, we're having a lot of trouble with your audio. Do you want to try something different? I don't think that's any better.
Switch devices.
That sounds better. Oh, it degraded again. We can give you a minute to figure it out. Don't worry.
All right, cool. Switch devices.
Yeah, that does sound better. We can give you a second to figure it out. And again, a reminder to those on Zoom, if you'd like to make a public comment, click the raise hand button. And if we have several folks, we'll promote you to panelist as we get to you.
So just like to say,
Sorry, sir. We're still having a lot of trouble with your audio. Do you want to try again?
we gotta get something else. Now, go back.
Yeah, it's just really garbled. I'm sorry. We can't hear what you're saying. Melina, do we have anybody else that would like to make a public comment? No.
Haven't seen any on.
I'm sorry, sir.
He said it was switching devices.
Okay, we'll give you a few more minutes to get it sorted out and then we'll move on with the public hearing. And for the record, we don't have any in-person public comment.
No, ma'am.
It's popped up. On here.
Thanks, Melina, for managing that.
If you would like to make a public comment, if you could raise your hand again.
So Matthew Zeinert, if you can hear us and you'd like to make your comment, if you click the raise hand button, then we are able to promote you. But it's possible you're still getting set up. I think, Mr. Zeinert, we see you on Zoom. If you're able to click the raise hand button, we'll be able to promote you to panelist. Otherwise, we'll be moving on with our public hearing.
There we go.
Straight. Great. We see a user with the title of Sweet. If you want to unmute yourself, you would be able to make a public comment.
Not hear me?
We can. Go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes. Please
Okay,
introduce.
cool. Well, my name is Rod Sweet. I've been here since 1973. 74 is my first year in Colorado in Durango, Silverton area. I have seen Silverton flourish and have seen it not flourish. I am one of the founding fathers of Silverton Greenworks with Jason Caraway and also Phil. I can't remember his last name very well. When we first came in and tried to get our license, they said no, absolutely no, because we don't like the smell. We don't like this. We don't like that. Well, there's good people in there that want to make Silverton better than it is. Why do we punish them for that? I don't understand the philosophy. I grew up there. I know the place. I know what happens. And I'm just saying, come on, there's no matter what Cole's got going on, he's still a business. He's still a business owner. He's a good business owner. He's also a veteran. Does that, and that's where I want to stand. I'm like, look, come on, man. Why? Because he's got some shit on him. Don't we all? He's also an Elks member. I'm a member also. I don't see a lodge in Silverton. I wish there was, and Cole might be the person to get that done. He's looking forward and not backward. We need to start looking forward because it's about brothers and sisters, friends and family to be able to get things done. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hey,
Great. Yeah,
can
go
you
ahead.
guys-
You'll have 3 minutes. Thank
right.
you.
Can you guys hear me better now?
We can. Go ahead.
Great. Sorry about that. And thank you for the patience.
Of course.
Yeah, so my name is Matthew Zeinert. I've known Cole Davenport for probably 10 years or more. He's a very good friend of mine. And I can attest to the fact that Cole genuinely wants the best for the community and for those around him. Myself as an example, when I'm a software engineer by trade. And when I was trying to get my career off the ground, Cole was very helpful to me and provided lots of support to me. And big reason I have the career I do now is a large part and thanks to Cole and his generosity. So when I say that Cole wants the best for the community and those around him, I mean that. And I know that he wants to see Silverton grow, and he wants to see it grow in a healthy and positive way, and he wants it to flourish and be the best version of itself that it can be. And like Rod said, he's looking forward and not back. He's got a quirky personality, but I think everyone does, and that is what makes Cole unique and makes him a great asset to your community. And that's all for me.
Thank you. Again, if you're on Zoom, you're welcome to make a public comment. Just click the raise hand button. Okay, I don't see any more public comment on Zoom, so we'll close public comment. And we'll now move on to Board of Trustees, questions, deliberations. A couple things, again, to set the stage for us. Just a reminder to the board, when we continued this hearing, we were really focused on those kind of key components of what is a prohibited licensee under the code. And we were particularly thinking of the area of a prohibited licensee is a person who's been convicted of a felony or serving a deferred sentence for a felony, or having a criminal history indicating that he or she is not of good moral character. And then, as Clayton mentioned, the other kind of consideration for us here, I think under prohibited licensee, is someone whose criminal character or records pose a threat to the regulation or control of marijuana, such as violation of CRS 18-18-406, offenses related to marijuana. So those are kind of the grounds that we've been considering before, and we requested the criminal record to have a little bit more evidence to go off of as opposed to the testimony that we heard at the previous hearing. Clayton, I have a couple of questions for you as we kind of think about where we're headed in our decision-making process. The first question is kind of a reminder of what our options are. We can revoke the license, we can suspend the license, and then there's pieces about imposing fines or criminal penalties according to the code. So do you want to give the board just a little clarification on kind of what the choices are here for us?
Sure. But I think the long and short of it is, after looking at the criminal record, I would say any criminal history, there's no felonies, any criminal history that might be considered a crime of moral turpitude has been dismissed by the DA. And so I don't think it's fair to use that criminal history against the applicant. That leaves you with consideration of the marijuana violation that's in the record of selling to an underage person, and whether or not you think that's serious enough to suspend or not renew the license. And so I would, after looking at everything, that's kind of my guidance and advice there. I would ignore any statements made by anyone previously regarding reputation in the community. That's just simply not a consideration. You have to go by, according to the statute, more of the criminal history and or the overall criminal history and or an offense related to the marijuana code. And so I think you guys have narrowed it down to the proper scope, and I would just stick to that and discuss and make a decision based on what you have in front of you, disregarding just statements of reputation, etc. Does that answer your question, Madam Mayor?
Yep, thank you, Clayton.
Good question.
Hold on, Cole. Okay, so now it's time for the trustees to deliberate. You're welcome to ask questions of Clayton, of the applicant, and we can discuss amongst ourselves, so. And or if anybody has any more clarifying questions for,
I do have a statement though, real quick. I do have a license from one of the enforcement.
Yep.
So.
hold on, please. Thank you.
I guess Clayton, sorry, I have another question. I understand what scope we're trying to examine evidence under. Maybe to dig into like Dana's question a little bit more. So the options we have in front of us are not just like revoke license or not revoke license, like there's an option for suspension or something else.
Yes, you can suspend, revoke, non-renew. Technically you could levy fines as well, but that kind of has already been done for any previous misconduct, and I would steer you away from that. There's nothing to, should be no like pecuniary punishment or consequence here. I think you're really just deciding whether or not you want to permit the status quo, which is the licensee to move forward and or suspend the license for a certain amount of time, revoke the license altogether, or just not renew for this year and force the applicant to possibly reapply through another process. So those are your options. You can, you understand the burden of proof, he said, and so you just have to weigh it against that burden. The applicant does have the option to appeal your decision, which is statutory, and there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, I think that answers your question. Let me know if it doesn't.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, if no one wants to kick us off, I'll start the discussion. I think for me, when I think about this, as Clayton clearly outlined, I think this has helped clarify kind of what we're considering here, right? And for me, it really comes to this marijuana code violation with the sale to minor. And so I think we have options here, right? We could be persuaded of the opinion that that is a severe enough violation in combination with whatever else has been presented, that would warrant revocation or suspension, or we could say, nope, we think that that fine has been paid, that process has been followed, and we're willing to renew the license. And so I think for me, Mr. Davenport, this is a point where I would welcome you to come back up to the stand, and I have a question for you, is sort of like, what sort of evidence do you have to give to the board that violations like that are not going to be happening in the future? And let me ask you this question, right? Like,
That's fine. That's a
have a minor,
fair question.
this is not a fabricated ID, right? That is tricky to spot.
It was a bad day on
Pretty
both of us.
violation.
And Penny was part of it too. She did the thing. I actually was, since I was guilty by association, I had to take it. The only thing I ever did wrong in the video was me giving her change. I did not exchange any marijuana product into that in the transaction, but the MED saw it as is, and plus pressure politics really does hinder.
That's not quite how it's presented in the record.
I know. I know what it was. There's very extensive. I read it. I've been.
What's been presented, and so what?
So how to prevent it?
That incident?
So how to prevent it?
I'd ask you to look to the future
Yes,
and give some sort of,
prevention.
what do you have to say about a violation like this not occurring in the future?
Well, like I said, hopefully this has been already addressed. Obviously, it's a mistake. It happens to all the liquor license people or even bartenders in town. There's been many of them. They're not prosecuted like I am right now. Persecuted, excuse me. By somebody else, not you guys. But with that being said, you guys are been more fair. You guys see logic. Okay? Love you guys. I don't want nothing to do with any of you guys like in trouble. No, I don't want to be in trouble with the law. I can deal with this guy. But, what I gotta say is, I wish that this never happened, and it can be prevented, and it always will be prevented. It was a bad day. Yes, we all have that. Bartenders have a bad day. But again, I'm standing here, yes, trying to convince a licensee board of licenses, like trustees, excuse me, all of you. I mean, it's very nerve wracking. It's very stressful. You got a lot of anxiety, and you heard from friends and testimonies of other people. Some people, I'm like, what the heck that guy was, but thank you. But I want you guys to thrive. I'm not fighting on you. I don't want to fight y'all.
Have you implemented different approaches in your stores?
Yes.
This kind of violation?
Yes, of course. It's double checking their scanners and things like that. We do have more security. And, it goes back to tell you that I'm too smart for this job. I studied electrical engineering. I want to go back to that. I want to work with you guys in the schools and stuff. I want the students here to thrive. I want things in the community to thrive.
Thank you.
That was a very bad mistake. I'm not going to go on the street selling marijuana to a student or anything like that. That was a setup. That is a sting operation.
But it exists to enforce.
Yes, I know, but they do violate.
You've answered my question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
There are board members' questions for Cole or for Clayton?
I mean, this is the time, please. I will sit there and anything you guys want.
Okay, I think you can take a seat.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Ron, I don't want to forget you're online, so feel free anytime you want to come off mute. If you have anything to add or questions, feel free. Board members, deliberations? Options for moving towards a finding?
I'll make a statement on that.
Thanks, Ron.
Yep. State's already fined him. They're happy with the results on how they do it. I think we should let it go with that. However, if it happens again, I think we're looking at least a 3-month suspension. If it happens a third time, lose your license permanently.
Thanks, Ron, for that contribution. Other thoughts from the board? Again, remembering that we have a variety of options and latitude here. I tend to wait on the side of further suspension, just as other liquor licenses have those type of consequences. Only seen that through town, but I think full, like, revoking is over the top. Go ahead, Jim.
I have a question for Mr. Davenport. When we met last October, it was discussed that the incident with this underage minor took place in your store, you, someone else, whomever.
I understand.
That there was also a statement provided to the state. Do you recall that statement?
No, it was just, yeah, it was just there. Yeah, of course. I don't provide that. I don't recommend, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't recollect that complete statement.
Okay. What, may I ask the dollar amount of the fine that you paid to the state?
Excuse me?
May I ask the dollar amount of the fine that you paid to the state?
Talking about after all this was done to the court?
With regards to the situation, yes.
$534 and some change.
How long was your license suspended?
No time. None, not by the state.
There are stiffer fines and penalties and suspensions for liquor sales.
I know.
Minors.
Correct.
Interesting.
Yes. But I also do have, the state has, and if you look back into your what do you call it? Packet, thank you. And you'll see at the very end, the person from MED said, we'll tell you about our further investigation. Well, I don't know what they told you guys, but probably back November, less than that, maybe back in October, I got, something like that. I don't know exactly, but I should have brought it up here. But the state did reinstate my license after all this stuff. I have it. I can go get it right now and bring it right back to you in a matter of moments.
That's all right. Thank you.
Or email it. I can email it. But revoking, no, there was no revoking of any of my license. They fined me at the court because I was just handed money. It's on camera.
Thanks. Jim, more questions for?
That's just fun. I'm thinking.
Okay.
Tyler, Carl?
So Cole, was your license suspended for a while?
Never, it has never been suspended ever at all.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ron. I'm still doing business as Silverton Greenway, so that answers your question, and I do have my appropriate license from the state. Apparently, they found that the town, you guys, I guess, I'm sorry, the licensing board, they found their investigation to be more credible. No offense.
And,
Go ahead,
and I want to clarify something for the board. The what was I going to say? Oh, the state authority won't approve a license if the local authority suspends or revokes it. So you guys are the tip of the spear here. If you don't do anything, they will just continue to approve it, just so you're aware of the process.
So to clarify that, Clayton, it sounds like the state relies on the local authority. Go ahead, Melina, you have staff yeah.
The state approves the license first, but that doesn't really mean anything. The state approves that it comes to us. You are the licensing authority.
That's correct.
So when they approve it first, then it comes to you. If you deny it, then it's denied.
That's correct.
The state is looking for the local perspective.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
It goes through them first, but then it comes to you. If you deny it, then it's denied.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Because
That's the local authority. That's you guys as a.
Thank you, Cole.
I'm sorry.
That's please.
if the local authority can always be more stringent than state authority.
Right. And may I assume that the local authority would tend to have more information, more context for making licensing decisions.
Correct.
Thanks.
So would the state ever suspend a license or would they rely on us?
They are relying on you.
Okay, so
They're relying.
to say that the state didn't suspend it doesn't mean anything.
I mean, if there were a really, really massive problem, then they would probably suspend it.
So there could be degrees. Okay.
There could be a degree where I would imagine they would catch it, but if they're relying on you.
Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification.
Be mindful also, I can appeal for that too as well, if it does get denied, and I don't want to do that either. Was that right, Clayton? Sorry, if you're still there?
No.
Oh, excuse me.
Did he have to?
There he is. Mr. Clayton, I have a question for you.
State,
Excuse me?
are there quarterly reports provided to the state
Always.
on any of these licenses?
Oh, no, it's only yearly. It's only yearly. And now they just changed it bi-yearly now. It's 2 years. They just changed it now.
To every 2 years.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it used to be every year. Now it's every 2 years.
So the state really does rely.
Yes, they do. They do really rely on your local authority, even though they will grant a license, but they do the background checks as well on me. They do a thorough background check and they see me fit. And obviously you guys have the choice, as what Mr. Clayton has just mentioned, to revoke, to suspend, or you have the right to allow me to do business.
Thanks, Mr. Davenport. Clayton, did you have anything to add there in terms of kind of the relationship between the state licensing and the local board?
No, just that the local board, if you don't approve the application, the state won't approve it either. State licenses are required, and he has it, but they would not be issued if the applicant, if it was removed or revoked by the local authority. So they've kind of pushed it down to the local government to make those decisions, which is what you're here to do. It doesn't mean they don't do their own investigations, et cetera, on different scale, but I'm unaware of whether or not the state did an investigation into this or not. They kind of expect the local licensing authority to take action when necessary. And then based on your action, they'll accordingly issue a license. So if you revoke the license, the state isn't going to override you.
That's
Does
correct.
that make sense? Yeah.
Yep.
Correct. Yeah, and also the fact that, yes, you guys can revoke it as you want, as you will. I just, would see it being a real hinder on the city too.
Yeah.
Just
Mr. Davenport, I'm going to have you sit down for now if we have any other questions from the board. I think we've gotten a lot of great clarification, and I think that really kind of centers our role and responsibility as sort of the first
Line of defense.
line of defense for ensuring that the marijuana code and the town code is enforced. Clayton, a question for you. If we were to do a suspension, we have the leeway to determine the time period of the suspension. And is there some sort of like checking back in to reinstate the license, or does the suspension just get removed and the license gets reinstated? Like, I guess my question is, for this board to be seated again to review this same license, what would trigger this board being seated to review this license again?
Another annual review, or an issue that was brought to light to the board, like regarding another violation or something that would trigger an analysis. As the licensing authority, you can take up any issue at any time, as long as it meets the burden. Obviously, rumors and reputation isn't going to do it. But for example, if you know that an applicant receives like another marijuana violation, et cetera, then you could hold a board meeting, hold a public hearing, and possibly revoke based on that.
Right. Okay, thank you. So we have an option or a scenario such that we could suspend the license for a certain period of time and have a follow-up licensing public hearing.
Yeah, no, if you suspended, Madam Mayor, then you could just say, it's suspended for a week or a month or whatever you decide, if you decided that. And then it would just automatically, then you wouldn't have to have another hearing to reinstate it. The suspension is just that, it's suspended for a certain amount of time, and then it would just by default come back into play after that suspension, that time period lapsed. If you revoked or didn't renew it, then you'd possibly have to see it again in a future application, and or would have to have another hearing to reinstate it. But a suspension wouldn't require another hearing.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to speak for my colleagues, but from my personal opinion, I think this is complicated, right? And I feel for you, Mr. Davenport. We've heard your testimony. I can respect your history, your background, your intention in this community. I take very seriously coming to a meeting and potentially impacting someone's livelihood, someone's business space, someone's ability to make money and to live in this community. I take that really seriously. I think,
Thank you.
and I also do think, like, I take seriously selling to a minor. I take seriously some of these concerns that have been raised. And so where I'm coming from is I would be kind of interested in some type of suspension that kind of says, look, we are taking this seriously. We're taking your operating here in this community seriously. And we want to make sure everything is above board because that's our job. And I tend to agree with Lindsay that complete revocation feels a little bit extreme. It's kind of like a one strike, you're out, and that doesn't quite sit right with me. But what I care about and would want to know about our options for is having another review or having some option where this board would know if there was a marijuana violation or if there was some other incident. So even if we did something like a suspension for a period of time, I don't know what that looks like. Even then, after that license is reinstated, I would kind of like to check in. I mean, maybe you call it like a probationary type of thing, but I would kind of like another check-in, at least for this board to know were there subsequent violations? We have the authority to, again, look at the criminal record through law enforcement. And I would like to check in. I think having a few more eyes on this operation makes me feel a little bit more comfortable sitting in the seat and having this role. So that's kind of what I put out to my colleagues, but I'm curious what you would think. Go
May I?
ahead.
Oh,
Yes.
great. I'm gonna jump in. This meeting tonight, this special session, these conversations, opinions or thoughts, asking the tough questions. What we're doing right now is setting precedent for future cases. I truly do believe that.
I agree.
In my 5 years, I've never come across anything like this. We've never come across anything like this. So what
Let's deal
we're
with it.
doing right now is setting the stage for future boards and for future discussions with other operators. I wrote down several minutes ago, suspension, fine, and a probationary period. I don't know what that suspension looks like. I don't know what that fine looks like. I am adamant on a probationary period that here locally, this board and this community feels comfortable that within a designated time period, we can recognize or know that this operator, you in this instance, is essentially staying within the guidelines and the guardrails of being a good licensee by the state and by the town of Silverton. That to me is the biggest one, because if there is a violation or if there is a hiccup or a stumble, then what we've learned through these meetings and conversations sets a pattern.
Well, a pattern to what do you pertain to?
The conversations that we've had both in October and now today.
Yeah, okay, well, that happened back, what, I was like over 6 months ago.
I understand.
Hold on, Mr. Davenport. Thank
I'm
you
talking.
for that.
I think also this is something, this reflects the need for us to have a different licensing authority, right? I know that the sheriff brought that up in one of the in I think 2 previous meetings, but
This pertains to my license. Can we deal with this right now?
just like the,
We will, please.
just like the,
I'm gonna
just like
ask you to
the,
sit down for now, and if we have a question for you, we'll get back to you.
just
Thank
like the liquor license, right, authority.
Mhm.
So, but I think it would be easier for somebody who's, who had taken this over to then do those checkups and say, okay,
Mhm.
this is what we've seen before from this licensee or that licensee. And so if it compounds,
Mhm.
they can deal with it and
Mhm.
maybe, they'll have precedent. Maybe they can look to what other communities have done. But again, like Jim said, I've been on the board for 4 years. I've never dealt with this and I don't know what the precedent is. So whatever we do here, I think we should also continue to move towards that. And then one question for Clayton. I know that Jim mentioned suspension, a possible fine and probation. Did you say earlier that there shouldn't be any fine levied by the town, or did I mishear you? Because the state already levied one?
I mean, you can, it's not like a double jeopardy issue or anything like that. And technically you could levy a fine or, or suspension, or, I like the idea of probation. I think you can also, allow the continuation under the license with under probationary period, which isn't what I didn't mention, but I think would be completely allowed. And then, have a status update or wait till the annual review and determine whether or not what other action you might take based on the applicant's, ability to abide by marijuana regulations. But I mean, the statute allows you to do a fine for a violation. It's already been criminally adjudicated and the applicant's already been fined. And so it doesn't sit well with me being, even as a, district attorney and prosecutor. It just seems like that, the state's already considered the criminal aspect of that. And typically fines are for infractions and violations. I mean, technically this is, you're looking at this from an administrative point of view and taking administrative action. And the fine is allowed. It just doesn't, I don't know. That's not really the good legal answer. It just doesn't seem right. Although you could come up with any combination of that scheme, you know, even say like, well, you know, you can either pay this fine to the town or undergo a 1 or 3 or 6 month suspension, whatever you're thinking. So you can give the applicant options as well. I mean, really the sky's the limit here because you are the licensing authority.
Okay, thank you.
If it helps,
Who was the fine paid to?
I'm sorry, sir.
Who was the fine paid to, your 500 and some odd dollar fine?
San Juan County Sheriff's Department.
Okay,
Thank
did you
you.
have something to add?
I was looking up other communities and some of their policies around infractions on marijuana licenses, and the town of Breckenridge does a first offense suspension of license for up to 15 days. And I can keep looking if you guys need more kind of context there, but that was one that just came first, so.
The timeline, I think, helps set an interesting pace.
Yeah, I think that's useful. Sorry, I had a little harder hearing what she said. I'm sorry. What did you say, Miss Gloria? The suspicion of what?
Lori just said that in other communities, for a first violation of the marijuana code, there might be a suspension of 15 days.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Carl.
And that's for sale to a minor specifically.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's in
Ms. Green.
addition to a fine
No.
and probationary period, or just the 15-day?
By the city or town of Breckenridge.
Just a 15-day suspension period.
Well, and when you guys mentioned suspension.
Fine is okay and it is allowed. It is not defined.
Thanks.
Okay.
Go ahead, Carl.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's useful information. And I think to Tyler's point, like some sort of policy around this is really what we need and what would help us a lot with this process. And I think, you know, as Jim mentioned, like we are setting precedent here and we can think about maybe this is our first try at what a policy might be. That's kind of the way that I'm thinking about it. And that makes it feel like a really important decision, not only because it affects, you know, Mr. Davenport's livelihood.
Yeah, and it's really not technically a trial because it's just a hearing. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not under.
Mr. Davenport, I'm going to ask you to just respond if we ask you a question. Thank you.
Looking at me, it's okay.
What's the penalty for like a liquor license suspension for selling to an underage?
At the moment, the grocery store is losing their license for 3 days over Super Bowl.
Okay.
For selling to a minor. For their first offense ever.
Okay.
So I've heard a couple themes. I think I'd be curious to hear from the board if there's anyone advocating around a complete revoking of the license, because we might need to tease that out. I'm hearing some sense around, I've heard more commentary coming out of the board's mouth around some sort of suspension, fine, or probationary period. Is there anyone on the board who's advocating for revoking Mr. Davenport's license at this point? Ron, I'm going to go off of your comment earlier that you were in favor of a suspension and not revoking the license.
That was a suspension after the second violation.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah. So you're not advocating for revoking the license completely?
No.
Okay. So it seems like where we're settling out for kind of our first pass at this type of a policy is some sort of suspension. And I express my interest. Jim said this in sort of like a check-in, right? A review. We want to know again, or we want to have some mechanism to know if a violation has occurred or something. And so would anybody like to propose a time period for a current suspension? Or Ron's suggestion also has been not for this one, but that we would move as a licensing board to have some sort of policy around second offense or third offense.
I would advocate for an initial suspension that's pretty short and, uh, you know, intended to communicate the severity and the seriousness, but not super impactful. A second offense would include a much longer suspension, 30 days or longer, and then a third offense would require revocation or suggest revocation within the policy. I think my feeling is that the most important thing that we need to do as a board is communicate that this is serious, and we do think that selling to a minor and other marijuana offenses are a big problem and something that needs to be, looked at closely. But I also personally feel that a first offense is kind of an opportunity to do it in a way that's sending a message more than creating a really substantial impact to the applicant's business. That's my feeling.
Thanks, Carl, for that proposal. Support, opposition, other thoughts?
I support, also, I'm in agreement with a kind of a check-in period, like 6 months, something like that, of being able to understand if anything has happened within that time period. We can't necessarily, like to your question, check to see like if the systems have been improved, like we're kind of going off of, trust, sorry, Cole. We're going off of trust here that the systems have been improved. So this is a way to check in that you're following through on.
No, I agree with all that. I mean, there's definitely these.
So, sorry, it wasn't a question for you. That was just, I was just commentary.
I was
Thanks.
talking to you because it sounds like you're a part of here. Yeah.
I have no hearing aids.
Yes.
Excuse me.
So that's where I would be.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, Tyler?
Yeah, I think it's also important that, again, some sort of policy that way. It can be meted out equally to anybody that has an offense, and we can avoid any perception of unfairness. And I think the suspension does send a good message to any other, folks in the area to make sure that they're, double checking and operating within the rules.
Yeah.
I've got a question. How soon does the state notify us of a violation, or do they even notify us?
Thanks, Ron. Good question.
My understanding is that they have no obligation to notify a local licensing authority of a charged crime.
So if we contact, so if we contact this, we'd have to contact the state and they would tell us if there was a violation?
No, we request the sheriff run CCIC, and that'll bring up any charges or adjudication of any crime that would be included.
Okay.
Under Title 18.
All right, thanks.
Yes, sir.
I think that's why I would advocate strongly for a check-in, maybe even several, because this board has the authority to make that request, and without really making that request, it doesn't happen in the same way. And so that's what I would advocate for. It's potentially, you threw out there, Lindsay, a 6-month check-in. And then again, I would also be interested in maybe doing that a couple of times. And that could transition into something you brought up, Tyler, which was, changing the nature of the marijuana licensing authority board, modeling it a little bit more similarly to liquor licensing. Yeah, so that I think highlights potentially the need for some sort of check-in from this board, because that's the mechanism for us to be informed. I was going down the line. Go ahead, Jim. It's your turn.
Thank you. I've heard suspension from this board. Does anyone have a timeline or days or months, weeks?
Vacation.
The example from Breckenridge was 3 days,
15.
15.
And then Telluride says no more than 60 days.
No more than 60.
Someone say 3 days.
That was based off of the selling tenor to a minor for
perfect.
tobacco or liquor, liquor,
Tobacco 7 days?
right? Under our code, I think it's 7, yeah. And liquor 3. So there's a variety of days out there.
I think my proposal is in a shorter time frame. I think 60 days is a lot. In that like tobacco, liquor, 3 to 7. That's kind of where I see it.
For a first offense.
For a first offense, yeah, for a first offense.
Go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, I was just gonna add one more thing. And then I think for the policy discussion, I think we should look to other communities and create a full policy for second offense, third offense, whatever in the future, and maybe not get into that today, right?
Yep, right. It really probably wouldn't even be appropriate in this context because what we're really doing is ruling on a hearing for a particular applicant. But I think this brings up some good points for the board as this body. Go ahead, Jim. A lot of things proposed.
I am very interested in, no offense, Cole, but I'm gonna set it, I think setting an example
Examples always there.
for
Hold on.
future operators needs to happen. This is a meeting, like I said, this is precedent setting.
Yeah, I'm closed most of the time.
Can you
Hold on,
hear me
Mr.
okay?
Davenport.
I would be in agreement with a 7-day suspension. We didn't even discuss a fine. And I really do believe in a 6 to 12-month probationary period with monthly check-ins. Where even if it's just you coming up and saying, hey, I'm an operator here in town and things are going okay. That's just me. But I do believe in setting the precedent now for other operators that we can avoid a lot of this. And I know it was a sting operation, as you said earlier. But we all have to do our best.
Trespassing sucks.
It does. Those are my.
No, I mean, I'm not gonna.
Hold on, please, sir.
But maybe I'm being too harsh.
I kind of, I really agree with the spirit of that comment. And I think that the simple fact is that this is before us because it's important. I think that's it's worth communicating clearly to all of our marijuana retailers that this matters to us and we will follow through.
Thanks, Carl. So Jim, go ahead, Ron. I see you're off mute if you wanted to add.
No, not yet.
So Jim, just a clarification, and I don't know, Clayton, if you want to weigh on this, but when we're talking about a probationary period, it sounds to me like what you're referring to is really a check-in, right? That there's a check-in with this board and the operator, and that check-in potentially includes a request through law enforcement for any records that would be relevant for the past time period, whatever we set that to be. Is that kind of, Clayton, is that something that sounds within the bounds of this authority? And Jim, is that kind of what you were referring to for a probationary period?
Yes. One of the items that we were supposed to be looking at and really digging in deep on is 1G, correct?
1H.
1H. Well, I was looking at G.
G, when we met at our last hearing, was very specific for the types of what it means in the law.
Well, to me, this is it's just one. It's one. And I think with monthly check-ins, Mr. Davenport, the operator, can prove to this board and to this community and everyone at home watching that you are of good moral character and that you do care about this community and that you want to prove to everyone. And like I said, no offense to you, but this is precedent setting, and I think everyone should be put on notice that exactly what Carl said. We do take this seriously.
And I think this feels very in line with how we handle liquor licensing in other states.
Absolutely.
This is not out of character to other applications of this type of law. Clayton, go ahead in terms of the probationary period or review.
Yeah, I think you have the authority to do that. Typically with probation, it's used as kind of like you said, there's some sort of like status checks or somebody who's looking into a person who's on probation, and then to recommit an offense while on probation is considered aggravating. So you're going to have some sort of, I don't know if you have to do probation if you want to do status checks, but if you're going to have some sort of meaningful probation, that would be something along the lines of a certain time period of suspension, and then say like you decide on, just as an example, because you've said the numbers, I'm not suggesting any sort of numerical value beyond what you would decide, but say you decided there was a 7-day suspension and a 6-month probationary period in which if the applicant were to reoffend under the marijuana code, that you would then suspend and or revoke that license. Like say, okay, this is 7-day suspension and a 6-month probationary period, and any violation within that probationary period would result in a 6-month suspension or something like that, so that the probation actually has an aggravating element to it. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to use probation. You could just say, we're going to suspend the license for 7 days and require that the applicant, report to a staff member or somebody, designated member of the local licensing authority, to self-report, violations or lack thereof over the next certain amount of time. So either one of those is fine. I think you guys are obviously, you're trending towards more oversight than is what's typically given under just the annual review, and I think that's appropriate, and you have the authority to do that.
Thank you.
Doesn't anybody hear that noise? Okay.
Here. So I think that helped give a little context that what Clay is saying is that a probation, it could kind of have more stringent effect if there is a violation during that time, or we can have a check-in, which is Mr. Davenport sends an email to staff and self-reports, or sends an email to, as Clayton said, one of us as a designee. And that can be an option as well. So what if we settle down on the suspension period? It seems like we need to nail that down. I've heard a week. I've heard 3 days. I think I kind of go along with Jim and Carl around, let's make it a week right now. And again, 7 days, we always have the option as the licensing authority to set policy different in the future if we learn more from liquor licensing and others. But I would be a proponent of 7 days. Is there any strong opposition to that amount of time?
I would still kind of see no suspension, since we're kind of in virgin territory with this. But then have Mr. Davenport do the 6-month probation check-in. I believe he knows the seriousness of it at this point. I think we have his attention.
Yes, sir.
I don't think we'll have any other problems in the future.
Thanks, Ron. So we have an advocate for 0. We have a couple ideas for 7.
I think 7 makes sense. It's consistent with like the backup policy, I think would be the basis that I would suggest 7 on. Keeping that consistent, and it's, showing all the arguments we've already made. I don't need to repeat them. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm seeing agreement around 7 days. Thanks, Ron, for the contribution. I'm seeing some agreement around 7 days. Okay. Okay, so the next piece is, how does the board want to move forward with probation check-ins review? I want to be sensitive to the fact that this is a board of 7 people that would meet or not. And so this idea that there is a kind of administrative check-in is a little bit appealing to me personally. And so I think that's an interesting option to consider. Again, no offense against the applicant, but for transparency and clarity, I would be a fan of the licensing board putting in a request with law enforcement. I don't think that needs to be monthly, but I would be interested in that being maybe every 6 months or a year for a period of time. I don't see that going on indefinitely, but I kind of feel like that's a way for us to get a check beyond self-reporting as well.
And I guess then what is the consequence if there's a violation during probation? Because I think, as Clayton said, that is important. Otherwise, there's no teeth.
Are there other towns like Breckenridge having a second violation policy?
Yeah, so this is actually a great policy document. So second offense within 1 year, it says that it says the presumptive penalty would then be determined at the hearing. So there isn't an
There's like a hearing.
Right, and then fine would be okay if allowed. A lot of the second offenses are no penalty guidelines in their current document.
It's possible that that's because it depends on the violation, right? I'm not going to speak for this board, but I suspect that if in 6 months or even a year, we had the same applicant in front of us with another violation of sale to minor, I think we would have certain feelings about that. And that would require a hearing to kind of work through that. So I could propose an option for this board, which is Mr. Davenport self-reports monthly, every 3 months. And there is an official.
How many years?
Hold on, just a sec, we're not there yet.
Oh, yeah. I'm getting tired.
And we review, we submit the request for law enforcement in 6 months and again in another 6 months, so at 12 years. And if there is an offense, then we have another hearing. And that is kind of a test case over the next year while we work out a more official policy for the place. Thoughts?
I'd support it.
I would suggest 2 years. Let's make it good.
Mr. Dan, oh, what did you just say?
Make it 2 years probation, because I mean, why 1 year? I mean, I already just paid my fine.
Quarterly.
I already made my fine. I already did everything.
Say that again, Melina?
For the next.
I never got probation. There was no probation. I never got probation. Sorry, I'm just frustrated because I have to report to somebody again.
No, you will be reporting to us.
Yeah, well, would have been.
I think.
The licensing agency, that's our job, Mr. Davenport.
Okay, well, I understand that, but I mean, what are you guys getting out of this?
So we will let you know. Right now, the board is deliberating.
Yes, ma'am.
When we have our findings, I will assure you that we will present them to you clearly.
This could be tomorrow,
No,
tonight.
tonight.
Okay.
We are deliberating. We are settling on what the findings will be.
Give me new law, or you guys
And
making a law tonight?
We will let you know what the implications are.
Are
And
you guys making a law tonight?
it's not making a law, it's making a ruling for you.
Okay, a rule is a law. Okay, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hold on, please.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Personally, would like to see Mr. Davenport, the operator, once a month as a check-in at that podium at one of our meetings, just to say hi and hello, and that things are okay and things are going well. That's what I would like to see.
And I'd like to see you guys' faces. That would be fun. Actually, this is not a disrespectful thing. You know what? I want to be part of this community. And if that what makes it better, I will make it better with you.
And it's that statement right there that I'd like to hold you to.
And I will have you have my word.
Thanks, Mr. Davenport. Jim, how do you feel on the points of a check-in through the law enforcement channels at a period of 6 months or 12 months?
Is that law enforcement or is that board? Sorry.
We'll let you know in just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
You guys want to handle it?
Okay, so we have a proposal on the table of a face-to-face check-in, seeing Mr. Davenport's face, having a check-in, having him on the agenda once a month from Jim. And then I would like to propose 6 months and 12 months with an official request for criminal record or violations.
Okay, yeah, I think.
Perfect.
And if there is a violation during that time period, we would convene another hearing.
Yeah, I think if for some reason, check-in once a month is not possible, letting us know ahead of time, typing out an email for that check-in.
Via Zoom. We'd love to see you.
I want to be part of this community so much that I would love to see you guys' faces because this makes it better. And even if this is a probational thing, whatever, well, at least we can go ahead and make some other things and make the dark sky a comment and things like that. We can actually have fun with this.
Thanks, Mr. Davenport.
It doesn't have to be negative.
Great. So Clayton, a question for you in regards to kind of how the trustees move forward on some presented options. Does someone make a motion or, I mean, I know in this memo we talk about our findings. And so can you give us a little guidance on how we move forward with sort of what I would inelegantly say is the sentencing or the decision making for the applicant? Can you guide us there?
Sure. I think you make a decision just like you would in any other setting. Probably the findings themselves are, which I think you kind of already talked to, is that do you believe a violation has occurred? In this case, it's fairly simple based on the the findings in court that say there has been a violation. So you would still need to make a finding that a violation has occurred or that you found that a violation has occurred, and then make your determination as to what the consequence of that violation is. For the town, in this case, it'd be something along the lines of a motion that we believe that a finding has occurred, and that based on that finding, you would be doing a 7-day suspension of the license and require. I wouldn't go past the annual review, so require whatever it is, 11-month probationary period to the next annual review with like a 6-month checkup through law enforcement for any for further criminal history, and then require the applicant report either by affidavit to staff or to to a public meeting, and assert that no violation has occurred in that between the last status update or whatever you want to do. So you can make that motion with the finding and determination along with the consequence all in one, and then vote on that. And then if you have a majority vote, then that would be what would transpire.
Great, thank you.
One quick comment, is it also pertains to you guys as a board? Since the state has also went and upped the marijuana licenses through the state for 2 years, and you guys do it every year, that'd be something else to look at too as well, as the licensing authority. The state has changed their statutes, and it's every 2 years. And I don't know if this town wants to revise and look at that too as well, just to let you know for future reference.
Thank you, Mr. Davenport. That can be considered as we kind of think about the future of this marijuana licensing.
Typically, so you're aware, typically liquor licenses and marijuana licenses and things of this nature are done on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
And there's an administrative review that determines, and that's done either just by, sometimes towns will run the CCIPC through local law enforcement, sometimes they won't, and it'll make the consent agenda. So if that's another way that you can do this. You can say that, you know, an applicant might be on probation until the annual review, and that you will not put it on for a consent agenda, but that it will be subject to, you know, an actual local licensing hearing to determine the progress of the, you know, probation, et cetera. So just so you're aware, you can do that as well. But otherwise, you know, if you don't specify that, you could see this, say you just did it for 6 month probationary period, nothing happened, then it comes up for annual review. It would just typically go by consent agenda.
Gotcha. Okay, so question to the board, would you like to see this application in 12 months outside of the consent agenda and review it as a separate marijuana licensing board, or are you comfortable including it in the consent agenda if these 6 month and 11-month checks through law enforcement have happened?
I think if we've cleared all the hurdles, then the consent agenda and going back to like a regular operating procedure would be acceptable.
Okay, is there any opposition to that proposal? Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification, Clayton. So it sounds from the deliberation that the findings of this board are that a violation has occurred according to the criminal record and the evidence presented in it. And the determination of this board is that we would request that there are monthly check-ins with the applicant to come to a town board meeting or to submit an affidavit or statement by email. Just clarifying. You can come up.
I'm so, that hissing sound is driving me nuts.
That's all right. So this is the point at which.
May I sit down here? May I sit down?
No, you can stand at the podium.
I still just can't hear nothing. Sorry.
And so the determination is that we're requesting that the applicant check in with the town board once a month.
Okay.
Or submit a statement to staff that would be included with a public meeting packet. The additional determination is that we are suspending the license for 7 days.
Okay.
And that we are requesting a 6-month period or an 11th month period of probation, with the request from staff to make a request to law enforcement that at 6 months and 11 months, there is a request for any record of violation or criminal activity.
0 fine.
And 0 fine.
Well, I'm just
Oh.
going off of whatever. I felt
It
like
sounds
everyone
like-
was thinking 0 fine.
So I would entertain a motion based on those determinations. Unless I misstated it, Clayton.
Just to keep clarifying that, 7 days, that's business taken away from revenue. And this town is bankrupting.
And Clayton, one quick question. Do we need to specify a date for the suspension?
You can, or you can just say, as you said, 6 months from determination and 11 months from determination, just keeping in mind that that would put you, at December, whatever it is, 28th, which is before the annual review. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But you can do it either way. You can set a date certain, or you can say 6 months from the date of this determination, which would, post date to this date, and then generate those, a 6 month and 11 month review.
Yep. And then when we're talking about a 7-day suspension, do we set a date for when that 7 days takes place? Like, is it from tomorrow, or do we set?
You would want to set like the dates, beginning on the first business day, after whatever date, or, however you want to determine that. Obviously, shutting down a business might take a little time, so you might want to give the applicant until, the following business week, and then start for 7 business days from, Monday, whatever that date is, and, run 7 days from then. That's just if you're concerned with that, keeping in mind, obviously, that as a business owner, it might take some time to, shut down the shop, put up a close sign, deal with employees, et cetera. I think that would be the, equitable, kind of the fair thing to do.
Yep. Okay. And when we're making our motion, we need to include the specific dates, correct?
That'd help.
Yeah, great.
Be
Okay,
as
so,
detailed as possible, yeah.
yeah, so a little more discussion from the board. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
So I would recommend suspension from January 9th.
February 9th. It's January to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I like that one. I like that better.
29th is what I was trying to say.
It's okay.
January 29th,
Get late.
February 4th, reopening February 5th.
So wait, 29th, 5th? That's what, there's a couple, that's
Days.
Starting to.
Please do
tomorrow?
tomorrow morning.
Oh, wow, I get a vacation. Nice.
Yeah.
Wait, where do I go? Can you guys give me suggestions?
I mean, it's supposed to be punitive.
I know, I understand. This has already been punitive enough. Thank you.
I think a question would be, is that enough time to make this happen? And also recognizing, right, February's coming up, like there are certain weekends that are more punitive than others. Mhm.
How about ski juring?
I think these dates are good.
Starting it immediately.
Yeah,
I think
effective.
it's, yeah.
And the impact is immediate. It is recognized immediately.
So if an offense from a different owner in the future, we don't want to say, well, we're going to just pick and choose when we're going to start it. So I think, again, setting precedent, it starts immediately, and then we can have that across the board for any future violations.
Okay.
What do you guys think?
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah.
Ron?
I'm good.
Dana, when you make the motion, or if we're gonna go over that again, can we clarify that it's under good cause, under H?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think a clarification for Clayton is basically
In the findings.
in the findings, I'm wondering if we're just making the determination that the licensee or applicant has violated the town marijuana code or any other marijuana code. I mean, is that what we're making the determination on based on the violation presented in the criminal record? Or are we making the determination based off of good cause item number H, which is whose criminal record or records poses a threat to the regulation or control of marijuana?
Yeah, I think this is a fairly simple issue because it's a per se, because it is a marijuana violation, it's per se affects, the marijuana regulation, violation section. So your findings are that, based on the criminal record or the criminal findings of guilt and violation of, the marijuana regulations, that a violation exists, and then your determination of what the consequence of that is going to be.
Yeah, okay. Great. Does that help?
Yeah, I was just making sure that we define like that it was, the violations were, yes, and that it's not a different letter underneath.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep, okay.
But it all falls under one,
Yeah.
Violation. has
A
occurred.
through H.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So G, bad actor, A, good moral character, H,
Marijuana.
don't be offensive.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the board? We move on to findings of determination. And feel okay. Where we're headed? All right. So as the marijuana licensing authority, we have had this public hearing and we have made the determination that the licensee or applicant has committed a violation according to the criminal records presented and the violation records presented. And so therefore, under good cause number H, referencing whose criminal character records poses a threat to the regulation or control of marijuana, such as a violation of CRS 18-18-406. And this board is proposing to rule that the consequences of which are the applicant, Mr. Davenport, will report to the board in person or by email to staff once a month, reporting any violations or absence thereof. That we will be doing a check through law enforcement. We will submit a request through law enforcement at 6 months from today and 11 months from today to review if any marijuana violations or criminal activity has occurred. And we will be requesting a subsequent marijuana licensing authority hearing if a violation has occurred in that time period.
Makes sense.
I would entertain
Glad you guys are doing this well.
that ruling.
Do you include the suspension in that?
Oh, and a 7-day suspension of the marijuana license starting January 28th,
Tomorrow.
And-
29th,
Wednesday, the 29th, and going through
the 4th of February.
Tuesday, the 4th of February.
Awesome. Not really, but okay, understood.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Right, roll call, please.
Trustee Halverson?
Yes.
Trustee Wakefield?
Yes.
Trustee Schutker?
Yes.
Trustee George?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Harper?
Yes.
Mayor Cranker?
Yes.
Excellent.
Motion passes. And Clayton, is there anything else we need to do for this public hearing?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. The time is 8:39 and I'll adjourn this meeting.
I want Bruce's job. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.